run from trying to go to the Lancet, as every Doctor Who ever. It's that time of year again. You can run from trying to go to the Lancet, as every Doctor Who ever.
I got nightmares in my head, I fear. Thoughts build up until I can't feel. My mind fills up into a creature, and it haunts me somewhere much deeper. I got nightmares in my head, I fear.
Hello and welcome to True Crime Rocket Science, the most authentic voice in true crime. How did Ruda Kubana go from being a child actor, signed up to a kids casting agency, and seen by millions on television in a BBC promo ad, to invisible? Before we get to that, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do. Welcome to the hundreds of you who have subscribed. If you're finding this analysis worthwhile, please like, share, leave a comment. You can also hit the thanks button, and let's get started. So according to an article in the Telegraph, they've revealed that Ruda Kubana took part in a West End show alongside dozens of other performance group members. And so when you have a look at that performance, Ruda Kubana doesn't sound like a very quiet kid here, does he? In fact, he seems to be in the lead role. So what changed? At this point, he was 11 years old. How did he go from being leading man or leading boy to invisible man or invisible boy? How did that happen? Now, a BBC source told Mail Online, Children in Need has no relationship to Axel Ruda Kubana. The individual was contracted by the BBC for the campaign video through a casting agency in 2018. So, what was that, 6 years ago? And has never had any affiliation with any of our funded projects. And so, let's talk about that ad briefly. You have him basically the most prominent figure from what we can see. It's a 45-second clip. He's 11 years old and he tells viewers in quite a merry tone of voice, it's that time of year again. And then he provides, and this part's not played, but he provides advice on the best ways to raise money for, I think, a charity called Children in Need. He also says, you can run from John O'Groats to Land End. And of course, these are opposite ends of the main island in terms of the British Isles. I think I've been to one of them. I think I've been to Land's End. That's at the bottom, southwest, right? Now, at the time, Ruda Kubana had worked with Ology Kids Casting based in Ormskirk, Lancashire, close to Southport. And so obviously, when he was based there, that was subsequent to the move from Wales. And so the question is, when did he stop working for Ology Kids? Or put another way, how long did he work for Ology Kids before perhaps he stopped working? That agency, Ology Kids Casting, has since deleted a series of Facebook posts about Axel's acting career, including one that read, "Look out for Ology superstar Axel in the new promo for Children in Need! !" And so, yeah, what changed? You had Axel having an acting career, not just a hypothetical acting career, but he actually appears on television in an ad, and the most prominently, apparently, of all the other children cast in that ad. Also, the casting agency is really pushing him forward, calling him a superstar. What changed? What changed from when he did this ad in 2018 to the 29th of July 2024? What changed? How did he go from superstar, as is described by his talent agency, to a slayer and a pariah today? Now, what's interesting about this ad is that Axel sounds very British. He sounds very eloquent.
To the Lancet, as every Doctor Who ever. It's that time of year again. You can run from trying to go to the Lancet, as every Doctor Who ever. It's that time of year again. You can.
Now, something that's quite ironic here is the casting agency made the decision to use this kid as its sort of leading face, leading presence, basically the lead actor in its little spiel. So he wasn't an extra. He wasn't also like the number 2 lead. He appears to be the number 1 lead, doesn't he? In other words, what we're saying is, certainly in this ad, when he was an 11-year-old boy, he was far from invisible. He was the opposite of invisible. He was very visible. He was very prominent. He was stepping forward, being seen, being noticed, confident, all of those things. Now, in my comments to my earlier videos now, I've been reminded how I know nothing about Britain and how ignorant I am because I don't live in Britain. Now, let me just say, I've got many fans in Britain that read my books, that know me, that like me, and I like them, and they follow me on Instagram, and there are a whole horde of people who don't know me who are expressing these criticisms. And my answer is that I think that seems to be an analogy perhaps for how Axel was treated. And what I'm trying to say is people that don't know me, that hear that I'm not from Britain, are immediately antagonistic. You're not from here. You don't know anything. You're a total ignoramus. Everything you're saying is bollocks, right? And yet there are people who do know me that really do like me, and they know my work and they know what I stand for. But all I'm trying to say is I think that's a useful analogy perhaps for how Axel was treated. If he looked like he wasn't British, well, then it didn't matter if he was British. If he sounded British, it didn't matter either, because to some, he didn't look British. And now, even if it turns out he was British, born in Britain, and Christian, well, that doesn't matter either. Because these days, what seems to matter to a whole host of people aren't facts or evidence, isn't what's actually happening, isn't reality. It's what we believe and feel about someone. What we think about someone is now the reality we kind of impose on that person, right? Is that fair, though, if that's happening to you? Now, I have to say, I've lived in a couple of countries. I've lived in South Korea. I lived in Britain for a couple of years as well. I've spent many months, if you add it all up, it's almost a year that I've spent in the USA, maybe a little bit less, 3/4 of a year. And I have to say, I've never experienced the snobbery I experienced in the UK when I was in the UK in any other country as much as I experienced it there. And in the same way that I'm told I've never lived in Britain, when I lived in Bristol for about a year, I lived in Maidenhead, Berkshire for about a year, several months in Walthamstow in London, also a month or so in Edinburgh. It doesn't matter what my truth is, apparently. It matters more what you say it is. But the difference between me and a little kid, while that sort of thing agitates me, I'm not going to let relentless, misinformed nastiness get to me. But I'm guessing it got to him. And if you're trying to get somewhere as a young person and you're being treated in this way, it can really get to you. It also seems something more than irony now that Rudakabana seemed to target youngsters, if not in the performing arts, then in a performing arts setting. Is it too crude or simplistic to speculate at this early point that he was either excluded from acting roles for some reason, or felt he was being excluded, perceived he was being excluded, and this is after his early big break? It's like, I've done this, now I don't understand why I can't do it anymore, what's going on? And then perhaps he jealously watched kind of from the sidelines as other kids superseded him. And perhaps that's when resentment set in. I mean, just think of the contrast of the kid in the courtroom covering his face, saying nothing, and the kid in the ad who's showing his face. It's all about showing his face and who's speaking prominently.
From Johnny Brooks to Lancet, as every Doctor Who ever. Is that time of year again?
He also sounds positive, upbeat, confident, all of those things. And I have to say, someone said, wow, are you sympathizing with this person? When we are trying to find out who someone is, we're trying to actually find the source of the problem. When we're trying to understand kind of what happened here, that is not sympathizing with the perpetrator. It's simply trying to understand how this thing happened. In other words, trying to figure out the motive, but also trying to figure out the source. How did this come about? And this seems to be an additional clue. One thing that's clear is that the child we see in this footage isn't an introvert, isn't quiet, and wasn't invisible. And also, he didn't seem to want to be invisible. So how did he end up becoming invisible? How and why did he end up becoming a shut-in? Any ideas? Thank you for listening, and I'll see you guys next time.